Have you ever stood at the base of a towering tree, craned your neck until your eyes lost its highest branches, and felt that strange, humbling thought, this living giant was here long before you, and it may remain long after you. For thousands of years, humanity has looked to the earth for healing, but the most powerful remedies don't always come from delicate petals or tiny kitchen herbs. Sometimes they come from the absolute giants of the plant kingdom. Colossal plants with deep roots, thick bark, heavy resins, and leaves so abundant they can feed villages. These are the massive trees, towering shrubs, and sprawling vines that have silently witnessed the rise and fall of empires. And they don't just offer gentle support. Many of them deliver rapid, noticeable effects, cooling a burn, tightening inflamed tissue, easing spasms, calming the nervous system, opening airways, stopping bleeding, or restoring energy when your body is depleted. That's what we mean today by instant healing. Not magic, not ignoring medicine, but real, fast-acting plant chemistry meeting real human needs. In Scripture, the idea that God provides healing through what grows from the ground is woven throughout the story. Genesis describes plants given for life. Exodus describes bitter waters made drinkable. The Psalms describe trees as symbols of strength and flourishing. And Revelation paints a final picture of restoration, a tree whose leaves are for the healing of the nations, in Revelation 22:2. Whether you come to this topic through faith, history, science, or simply the desire to feel better in your body, you're about to see how often these worlds overlap. Today we're diving deep into the forest of antiquity and modern research to uncover 20 colossal plants that can bring rapid relief, plants with biblical echoes, traditional uses across continents, and scientific backing that explains why people noticed their power long before labs existed. And you're going to want to stay with me for number 13, a massive life-giving tree so practical it's been used to purify dirty water, and so nutrient-dense it can help revive the exhausted body with stunning speed. Then number 20, an ancient sprawling vine connected to one of the most famous I am statements in the New Testament, whose compounds have been studied for their ability to protect the cardiovascular system within hours. One important note before we begin, these plants can be powerful. Powerful means helpful, but it also means you should use wisdom. If you're pregnant, breastfeeding, on medication, especially blood thinners, diabetes drugs, blood pressure medication, or you have chronic illness, talk with a qualified clinician. And if you're dealing with severe symptoms, chest pain, trouble breathing, heavy bleeding, signs of stroke or infection, seek emergency care. Plants are gifts, but they're not a substitute for urgent medical help when it's needed. Now let's begin. Number 1 is the baobab, often called the tree of life. In the arid landscapes of Africa and Madagascar, the baobab stands like a living monument. Some trunks are so wide they look like small buildings, storing massive amounts of water to survive drought. People have gathered under these giants for centuries to trade, to pray, to settle disputes, and to heal. While the baobab isn't directly named in the Bible, Scripture often uses majestic trees as metaphors for strength and flourishing. Psalm 92:12 says, "The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. He shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon." The baobab embodies that same image of enduring life in harsh places. Traditional uses are deeply practical and often fast-acting. Baobab fruit pulp, naturally dried inside the shell, has been used for diarrhea, dehydration, fevers, and general weakness. When the body is drained, the need isn't complicated. You need fluids, minerals, and stable energy. Baobab helps meet that need. Scientifically, baobab is loaded with vitamin C, polyphenols, and soluble fiber. Vitamin C supports immune function and collagen formation, and polyphenols help reduce oxidative stress. But one of the most instant effects people notice is digestive and metabolic. The soluble fiber can slow glucose absorption, smoothing out blood sugar spikes after a meal. That can translate into steadier energy and fewer crashes. Many also report quick relief from stomach upset when baobab is mixed into water, partly because it's gentle, partly because it supports hydration, and partly because its pectin-like fibers can soothe irritated digestion. A simple traditional method is mixing baobab powder into water or a light porridge. If you're using it today, choose a reputable source, start small, and drink enough water. Fiber works best when the body is hydrated. Number 2 is the cedar of Lebanon. This is one of the most iconic trees in Scripture. The cedar of Lebanon is mentioned again and again as a symbol of majesty, strength, and enduring beauty. In 1 Kings 5 and 1 Kings 6, cedar is brought to build the temple under Solomon, wood chosen not only for its quality, but for its symbolic power. The cedars were also associated with purification. In Leviticus 14, cedar wood appears in cleansing rites for skin disease, placed beside hyssop and scarlet yarn. Cedar's traditional medicine use spans ancient Near Eastern cultures and beyond. Cedar resin and cedarwood preparations were used on wounds, skin infections, and fungal issues. Cedar's aroma was also valued for clearing spaces and supporting breathing. Modern science helps explain why. Cedarwood essential oil contains sesquiterpenes and other aromatic compounds that have demonstrated antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory actions in lab settings. The instant effect many people notice is nervous system related. Certain aromatic compounds can promote relaxation and reduce perceived stress quickly through scent pathways linked to the limbic system. Topically, properly diluted cedarwood oil has been used to support irritated skin, and its antimicrobial properties can begin acting immediately on contact, though it's crucial to dilute essential oils and patch test because undiluted oils can irritate. Cedar is a good reminder. Biblical symbolism often points to real-world function. Strength, purity, preservation, those are not just metaphors. Cedar has chemistry that supports them. Number 3 is the banyan tree, a colossal fig that becomes a forest. The banyan is extraordinary because it doesn't just grow upward, it grows outward. A single tree can spread across acres, dropping aerial roots that become new trunks. In South Asian tradition, it's a tree of shelter, longevity, and community. In biblical imagery, the fig tree is repeatedly used as a symbol of peace and safety in passages like Micah 4:4. They shall sit every man under his vine and under his fig tree, and none shall make them afraid. While the banyan itself isn't the biblical fig, it belongs to the same genus family of symbolic fruit-bearing trees tied to covering, provision, and reflection. Traditional Ayurvedic practice has used banyan bark and aerial roots for diarrhea, dysentery, bleeding, inflammation, and certain metabolic issues. The instant action here is often astringency. The body has a way of responding quickly when tissues are tightened and excess fluid loss is slowed. Scientifically, banyan bark contains tannins, flavonoids, and phenolic compounds. Tannins bind to proteins on mucous membranes, creating a tightening effect that can rapidly reduce secretions and soothe irritation. That's why astringent plants can feel like they work immediately for diarrhea or mouth irritation. Research on ficus species has also indicated antimicrobial activity, supporting its traditional use for infections. Traditionally, a decoction, bark simmered in water, was used in small amounts. If you're exploring it today, the key is respect. Astringents can be overly drying if overused. Number 4 is aloe vera, wild and massive, not a tiny windowsill plant. In its natural habitat, aloe can grow into thick, sprawling clumps with heavy, blade-like leaves packed with gel. In John 19:39, Nicodemus brings a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100 pounds, to prepare the body of Jesus. That detail tells you aloe wasn't a small household curiosity. It was valued, costly, and used in large quantities for preservation and honor. Aloe's traditional instant reputation is legendary: burns, sunburn, rashes, minor cuts, mouth irritation. The moment aloe gel touches hot, damaged skin, many people feel immediate cooling and pain reduction. That sensation is not placebo. Aloe's gel is mostly water held in a matrix of polysaccharides, which forms a protective barrier that reduces exposure and friction. Scientifically, aloe contains glucomannan and asamannan, polysaccharides associated with wound healing support, plus compounds with anti-inflammatory properties. Studies suggest aloe may help with burn healing time and skin repair in certain contexts, though results can vary by formulation and purity. The fastest benefit tends to be barrier protection, hydration of tissue, and a gentle anti-inflammatory effect. Traditional use is straightforward: cut a leaf, apply the fresh gel. But be careful. The yellow latex layer under the skin of the leaf contains anthraquinones that can irritate skin and act as a strong laxative if ingested. For topical use, stick to the clear inner gel. For internal use, only use products designed and processed for ingestion. Number 5 is the frankincense tree. Frankincense comes from boswellia trees that thrive in harsh, rocky regions, trees that look like they shouldn't survive, yet they do. In Exodus 30:34-38, frankincense is part of the sacred incense described with precision. It's not presented as a casual scent, it's portrayed as something set apart, connected to worship, purification, and reverence. Traditional medicine used frankincense resin for breathing problems, inflammatory pain, digestive discomfort, and wound care. Burned as incense, it was believed to cleanse the air. Taken internally, it was used for joints and gut inflammation. Modern science has isolated boswellic acids, especially AKBA, known for anti-inflammatory activity via pathways including 5-lipoxygenase. That matters because certain inflammatory pathways are involved in asthma, arthritis, and inflammatory bowel processes. The fast relief some people feel, easier breathing, reduced tightness, less joint ache, can appear relatively quickly, especially with concentrated extracts, though true tissue-level healing takes time. Traditionally, small pieces of resin were chewed or infused. Today, standardized extracts are common. If you're on anticoagulants or have surgery scheduled, use caution. Always check interactions. Number 6 is the myrrh tree. Myrrh is one of the most symbol-rich substances in the Bible, given to the Christ child in Matthew 2:11, used in burial preparation and associated with suffering, healing, and honor. Myrrh comes from thorny commiphora trees that bleed resin when cut, a vivid natural picture of sacrifice turning into medicine. Traditional systems used myrrh as an antiseptic for wounds, a mouth and gum remedy, and a pain-relieving resin. It was used for sore throats, mouth ulcers, and infected cuts, conditions where fast antimicrobial action makes a real difference. Scientifically, myrrh contains sesquiterpenes and other resin compounds shown to have antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties. In dentistry, myrrh has long been used in mouth rinses because it can inhibit bacterial growth and reduce inflammation. That's where instant healing shows up. Less pain, less swelling, and a cleaner feeling mouth can happen quickly when bacterial load is reduced and tissue is soothed. Traditional use includes diluted tinctures for rinsing or powdered resin in small doses. Myrrh can be too strong if overused, and it's not recommended in pregnancy without medical guidance. Number 7 is the neem tree, the village pharmacy. Neem is colossal in function and often in size, fast-growing, evergreen, and intensely bitter. While not directly named in the Bible, neem fits a biblical pattern, bitter things that become healing when rightly used. In Exodus 15:23-25, the waters of Marah were bitter until God showed Moses a piece of wood that made them sweet. The principle is clear. Bitterness is not always a curse, sometimes it's medicine. Traditionally, neem leaves, bark, and oil were used for skin infections, wounds, parasites, fevers, and oral hygiene. Neem twigs were famously used as natural toothbrushes, an ancient practice that aligns with neem's antimicrobial properties. Scientifically, neem contains compounds such as azadirachtin and nimbidin, associated with antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, and insecticidal effects. The instant effect is often visible on the skin. Neem oil can quickly reduce itching from certain insect bites and may help calm inflamed, irritated skin. Its bitterness also stimulates digestion for some people, though internal use should be approached carefully because neem can affect blood sugar and may not be safe for everyone in medicinal doses. Traditional use includes leaf infusions for washing skin and diluted oil applications. Always dilute neem oil and avoid internal use in children or during pregnancy unless guided by a professional. Number 8 is the sycamore fig tree. This tree stands tall across parts of the Middle East and Africa. It appears in Scripture in meaningful ways. In Amos 7:14, Amos says, "I was a dresser of sycamore fruit," showing how common and valued the tree was. And in Luke 19:4, Zacchaeus climbs a sycamore tree just to see Jesus, turning the tree into a platform for transformation. Traditional healers use the sycamore fig's sap and fruit for skin issues, wounds, and certain infections. The sap's milky nature often signals latex-like compounds that can be protective or irritating if misused. Scientifically, ficus species contain tannins, flavonoids, and latex compounds with antimicrobial potential. Tannins again provide that rapid, tightening, and protective effect on tissues. When used correctly, that can mean quicker relief from minor skin irritation or localized microbial issues. Traditionally, small applications were used on the skin. With any latex-containing plant, caution is essential. Some people are sensitive, and too much can inflame rather than soothe. Number 9 is the giant reed, Arundodonax. This plant grows like a living wall, towering canes near water, sometimes reaching around 30 feet. Reeds are common in biblical landscapes. Moses is placed among reeds in Exodus 2:3. Reeds appear as symbols of frailty in passages like Isaiah 42:3, "A bruised reed shall he not break," and in Matthew 11:7 Jesus references reeds shaken by the wind. Reeds were everyday life, woven, built with, written on, lived beside. Traditionally, giant reed roots and leaves were used as diaphoretics to encourage sweating during fevers and as diuretics for urinary complaints. When someone has a fever and can't break it, inducing a controlled sweat can feel like an immediate shift. Scientifically, Arundodonax contains various bioactive compounds studied for different effects, including antispasmodic actions in certain preparations. The fast relief people report in traditional use often comes from relaxing smooth muscle and encouraging fluid movement, sweating, and urination, which can change how the body feels quickly. However, because reed species can vary and preparations matter, this is a plant where guidance and correct identification are crucial. Number 10 is the oak tree, the giant of covenant and strength. Oaks are some of the most majestic trees on earth, thick-trunked, long-lived, immovable. In Genesis 18:1, the Lord appears to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre. In Joshua 24:26, Joshua sets up a stone under an oak as a witness. The oak in Scripture often marks solemn moments, places where human life meets the weight of God's presence and promise. Traditional medicine uses oak bark as one of nature's strongest astringents. It was used to stop diarrhea, reduce gum bleeding, soothe sore throats, and help with minor bleeding and weeping skin irritation. The effect can feel immediate because the mechanism is immediate. Scientifically, oak bark is rich in tannins, potent compounds that bind proteins and tighten tissue. That's why gargling an oak bark infusion can rapidly ease a raw throat, and why compresses can help reduce weeping, inflamed skin. It's not mystical. It's chemistry doing what it does best, forming a protective layer and reducing fluid loss. Traditional preparation is a decoction, bark gently simmered. Because tannins are strong, oak is best used short-term rather than continuously, and internal use should be moderate to avoid stomach irritation. Before we move on, pause and notice the pattern. The instant plants often do one of a few things very fast. They cool and protect damaged tissue. They tighten inflamed membranes. They reduce microbial load. They relax spasms. They restore electrolytes and energy. Healing is sometimes dramatic not because the problem vanishes in a second, but because the body finally shifts out of crisis. Now let's continue, because number 13 is still ahead, and it may be the most practical plant on this entire list. Number 11 is the date palm. Date palms rise like columns in the desert, often over 100 feet tall, producing clusters of fruit that sustained entire civilizations. In Scripture, palms symbolize righteousness and victory, Psalm 92:12 again, and in Revelation 7:9, the multitude stands with palm branches. Palms also mark places of rest and refreshment. In Exodus 15:27, Israel comes to Elim, a place with 12 wells of water and 70 palm trees, a scene of provision after hardship. Traditional uses of dates are straightforward: rapid nourishment, strength for travelers, support for recovery, and gentle digestive support. When you are depleted, dates are a fast fuel. Scientifically, dates provide quickly available carbohydrates along with potassium, magnesium, and small amounts of other minerals and polyphenols. The instant effect is real. Your blood sugar rises, your muscles receive usable energy, and potassium supports normal nerve and muscle function, including the heart's rhythm. That's why dates have been a classic food for breaking fasts. They quickly stabilize the body. Moderation matters, especially for those managing blood sugar, but as a rapid, whole food energy source, The date palm is unmatched. Number 12 is the mustard tree. Jesus himself points to mustard in Matthew 13:31-32 and Mark 4:30-32, the smallest seed becoming a tree where birds perch. The teaching is about the kingdom, but it also reveals something about mustard's nature: small beginnings, explosive power. Traditional medicine used mustard seeds for congestion, chills, and pain. Mustard plasters, though harsh if misused, were used to increase circulation and warmth. People use mustard to wake up the body, to loosen mucus, to stimulate sweating, and to shift the feeling of being stuck in a cold or heavy chest. Scientifically, mustard seeds contain glucosinolates like sinigrin, which can convert into allyl isothiocyanate when crushed. That compound is pungent for a reason. It stimulates circulation, can thin mucus, and triggers reflex responses that can make breathing feel clearer quickly. This is why mustard can seem instant for congestion. Your sinuses open, mucus loosens, and the body's sensory alarm wakes up. Use caution. Mustard plasters can burn skin if left too long. Internally, mustard can irritate sensitive stomachs. Power demands wisdom. Now we arrive at number 13, the one I teased, and it does not disappoint. Number 13 is the moringa tree, often called the miracle tree. Moringa is fast-growing, resilient, and astonishingly nutrient-dense. In many regions, it's planted not just as a medicine, but as a survival tool. Food, water support, animal feed, and healing in one. While moringa isn't explicitly named in the Bible, many people connect it symbolically to biblical themes of healing leaves and restorative trees, especially Revelation 22:2, the leaves for healing, and the idea in Exodus 15 of God providing a remedy when resources were bitter and unsafe. Traditional uses of moringa are both nutritional and medicinal, restoring strength after illness, supporting anemia, aiding lactation in some cultures, reducing inflammation, and, most famously, helping clarify water. Crushed moringa seeds have been used in parts of Africa and Asia to bind impurities in dirty water, causing particles to clump and settle. In places where waterborne illness kills quickly, that practical use is a form of instant healing, in the most literal sense, reducing exposure fast. Scientifically, moringa leaves contain protein, vitamins A, C, and E, minerals like calcium and iron, and a wide range of polyphenols. Its isothiocyanates have been studied for anti-inflammatory and metabolic effects, including potential benefits for blood sugar regulation and oxidative stress reduction. The immediate effects people often report are increased energy, clearer focus, and reduced feelings of weakness, especially in those who are depleted or undernourished, because moringa delivers dense nutrition without being heavy. Moringa also supports the body's natural detoxification pathways by providing compounds that influence antioxidant enzymes. That doesn't mean your body becomes perfect in minutes, but it can mean that within hours you feel a real shift, less sluggishness, less inflammatory heaviness, more stable energy. A practical approach is moringa leaf powder in water, smoothies, or soups. Start small because it can be strong, and if you're on blood sugar or blood pressure medication, monitor closely. Number 14 is the fig tree. Few plants are as biblically loaded as the fig. In Genesis 3:7, Adam and Eve sow fig leaves together. In 1 Kings 4:25, the phrase "under his vine and under his fig tree" describes peace and security. In the Gospels, fig trees appear in parables and prophetic moments. Traditional use of figs spans food and medicine, constipation relief, soothing irritated throats, and poultices for boils. The instant aspect often shows up in digestion. When someone is constipated and uncomfortable, the relief that comes from restoring movement can feel like a rescue. Scientifically, figs contain fiber and enzymes like phycin, a proteolytic enzyme. Fiber supports bowel movement. Certain enzymes can aid digestion. Figs also contain polyphenols that may support gut and systemic health. Applied topically in traditional practice, fig latex was used carefully on skin growths because proteolytic enzymes can break down tissue. That's powerful and potentially irritating, so it's not a casual experiment. For simple, safe use, dried or fresh figs with water for constipation support is the classic approach. Number 15 is the pomegranate tree. Pomegranates appear in Scripture as symbols of beauty, abundance, and holiness. In Exodus 28:33-34, pomegranates decorate the hem of the priestly garments. In 1 Kings 7:18, pomegranates decorate the temple pillars. This fruit isn't just food in the biblical imagination, it's artistry and symbolism, a sign of overflowing life. Traditional medicine used pomegranate juice and rind for diarrhea, dysentery, parasites, and gum inflammation. The rind is especially astringent, and like oak, it can tighten tissues quickly. Scientifically, pomegranates contain punicalagins and other polyphenols with antioxidant properties. Studies suggest pomegranate juice may support endothelial function and blood flow and can reduce oxidative stress. The fast benefit people sometimes notice is circulatory, a feeling of warmth in the extremities, improved exercise tolerance, or reduced heaviness after meals. For mouth health, pomegranate's antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties can support gums. Pomegranate is generally safe as a food, but extracts can interact with certain medications. As always, food first, concentrated supplements with care. Number 16 is the juniper tree. Juniper appears in one of the Bible's most human moments. In 1 Kings 19:4-5, Elijah, exhausted, afraid, and depleted, sits under a juniper tree and asks to die. Then he sleeps, and an angel provides food and water. The juniper becomes a symbol of shelter in burnout, a reminder that bodies collapse and God still provides restoration. Traditional medicine used juniper berries for urinary issues, bloating, digestive cramps, and as a cleansing diuretic. When someone retains water, feels swollen, or has that heavy discomfort of sluggish fluid movement, a diuretic can feel instant. Scientifically, juniper berries contain volatile oils such as alpha-pinene and terpenin-4-ol associated with antimicrobial and diuretic effects. Increased urination can happen relatively quickly, shifting pressure and discomfort. Juniper also has a long history of being used in respiratory preparations, steam inhalations, and rubs, because its aromatic compounds can make breathing feel clearer. Caution is important. Juniper can irritate kidneys in high doses and isn't recommended during pregnancy. Use short-term and modestly. Number 17 is the olive tree. The olive tree is one of the greatest living symbols of resilience. Some olive trees live for thousands of years, surviving drought, fire, and cutting, sending up new shoots as if they refuse to die. In Genesis 8:11, the dove returns to Noah with an olive leaf, life after judgment, peace after chaos. In Romans 11, Paul uses the olive tree as a metaphor of belonging and covenant. And in the Gospels, the Mount of Olives and the Garden of Gethsemane form the backdrop of Jesus' deepest anguish and surrender. Traditional use of olive oil includes wound care, skin protection, ear comfort, and digestive support. Oil is protective by nature. It seals, softens, and reduces friction. That alone can create quick relief for irritated tissue. Scientifically, extra virgin olive oil contains polyphenols including oleocanthal, a compound noted for anti-inflammatory activity in pathways similar to common anti-inflammatory drugs. Many people feel this quickly as reduced stiffness or soreness, especially when olive oil replaces more inflammatory fats in the diet. Olive leaf extract has also been studied for antimicrobial and blood pressure supporting effects, though potency varies by product. A traditional approach is simple. High-quality extra virgin olive oil used consistently, and olive leaf preparations used cautiously if you're already on blood pressure medication. Number 18 is the castor plant. This plant can grow startlingly fast, reaching impressive heights with huge leaves. In Jonah 4:6, a plant grows rapidly to provide shade for Jonah, often identified by many scholars as a castor plant due to its fast growth and broad leaves. That scene captures the castor plant's nature: quick, sheltering, and intense. Castor oil has been used traditionally as a strong laxative, as a topical oil for skin, and in castor oil packs for pain and inflammation. The instant effect depends on how it's used. Internally, castor oil can cause bowel movement within hours, sometimes dramatically, because ricinoleic acid stimulates intestinal activity. That can bring relief from severe constipation, but can also cause cramping and dehydration if misused. Topically, castor oil packs are used for localized discomfort, supporting lymphatic movement and circulation. People often report reduced tightness and pain in a matter of hours, though evidence is mixed and much is experiential. Important warning: never ingest castor oil casually, and never consume castor seeds. They contain ricin, a deadly toxin. Use only properly processed castor oil
and ideally under guidance if using medicinally.
Number 19 is the cypress tree. Cypress trees stand tall, narrow, and long-lived, often associated with endurance. In 1 Kings 6:15, cypress is used in the temple's interior. Isaiah 44:14 mentions cypress among trees used for building, reflecting its value and strength. Traditionally, cypress has been used for circulation issues, varicose veins, hemorrhoids, excessive sweating, and minor bleeding. When blood vessels are overly relaxed in fluid pools, a remedy that tones tissues can feel fast. Scientifically, cypress essential oil contains compounds and tannin-like constituents associated with vasoconstrictive and astringent effects. That means it can tighten tissue and reduce swelling. People may notice rapid improvement in the feeling of heaviness in the legs when used appropriately in topical formulations, and rapid calming of excessive sweating in some cases. As with all essential oils, dilute properly, avoid sensitive areas, and use caution if you have vascular disease or are on related medication. Finally, we arrive at number 20, the second teaser, and one of the most significant plants of all in both scripture and human history. Number 20 is the grapevine. In the wild, grapevines are not delicate. They are ambitious, sprawling climbers that can overtake trees and stretch across canopies, reaching for light with unstoppable persistence. In John 15:1-5, Jesus says, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. I am the vine, ye are the branches." That is not a small metaphor. It's a declaration of life source, connection, and fruitfulness. Scripture also uses the vine as a symbol of blessing and abundance, and sometimes as a symbol of warning when fruit is absent. Traditional European and Mediterranean medicine used grape leaves for diarrhea and bleeding, and grape sap, sometimes called tears of the vine, for soothing irritated eyes. Grapeseed and skin preparations became more prominent later as people recognized their concentrated power. Scientifically, grapes contain a broad spectrum of polyphenols. Resveratrol is the famous one, found especially in grape skins, but grape seeds also contain oligomeric proanthocyanidins, powerful antioxidant compounds studied for vascular support. Research has explored how these compounds can support endothelial function, influence nitric oxide pathways, reduce oxidative stress, and modulate inflammation. The fast benefit some people notice, sometimes within hours, is circulatory, improved blood flow, a sense of warmth, less pressure, and calmer cardiovascular strain, especially in people under oxidative stress. There's also evidence that grape polyphenols can reduce platelet aggregation tendencies, which is part of why they're discussed in heart health contexts. But here's the key. If you are on blood thinners, antiplatelet drugs, or preparing for surgery, you must be careful with concentrated grapeseed or resveratrol supplements. Food forms, whole grapes, modest amounts of juice are generally safer than high-dose extracts. Cedar's aroma was also valued for clearing spaces and supporting breathing. Through 20 modern science helps explain towering trees. Cedarwood essential oil contains sesquiterpenes and other aromatic compounds that have demonstrated antimicrobial. Some of these plants are explicitly named cedar, fig,
The
pomegranate,
effect
olive,
many people
vine,
notice is
palm,
nervous system
oak,
related.
juniper.
Certain aromatic
Others
compounds
echo
can
biblical
promote
themes of
relaxation
bitter to
and
healing,
reduce perceived
leaves for
stress
restoration,
quickly through
and
scent
creation
pathways
as provision.
linked to the limbic system.
Second, traditional
Topically,
wisdom.
properly diluted cedarwood
Across
oil
Africa,
has been used
Asia,
to
the
support
Middle East,
irritated
Europe,
skin,
and indigenous
its
practices,
antimicrobial
people
properties
repeatedly
can begin
discovered
acting
that certain
immediately
giant
on
plants
contact,
change the body
though it's
quickly,
crucial to dilute
cooling
essential
burns,
oils and
stopping
patch test,
diarrhea,
because
easing
undiluted oils
infection,
can irritate.
restoring
Cedar
strength,
is a good reminder.
calming the mind,
Biblical
or
symbolism
supporting the
often points
heart.
to real-world function.
Third,
Strength,
scientific
purity,
explanation.
preservation.
Modern
Those are not just
research doesn't
metaphors.
replace
Cedar has
traditional
chemistry
knowledge.
that
It
supports
often
them.
explains it.
Number 3
Tannins
is the
tighten
banyan
tissue
tree,
and
a
reduce
colossal
secretions.
fig that becomes a forest.
Polysaccharides protect and
The
hydrate
banyan is
wounds.
extraordinary because
Aromatic
it doesn't just
terpenes
grow
affect
upward,
microbes in the
it
nervous
grows
system.
outward. A
Polyphenols
single tree
reduce
can spread
oxidative
across
stress
acres,
and support
dropping
blood vessel
aerial roots
function.
that become new
Minerals
trunks.
and sugars restore
In South
depleted
Asian tradition,
physiology.
it's a tree of shelter.
In other words, what
longevity,
people called
and community.
healing was frequently the
In
body
biblical
responding
imagery,
to real
the fig
compounds
tree
with
is
real
repeatedly
mechanisms.
used as a symbol.
And if you remember
of
nothing
peace
else
and
from today,
safety.
remember this.
In passages like Micah
Instant healing
4:4,
often begins with an
they shall
instant
sit every
shift.
man under
The
his
bleeding
vine and under
slows.
his fig tree,
The airway
none
opens.
shall make them
The
afraid.
burn stops screaming.
While the banyan itself
cramp
isn't
relaxes.
the biblical fig,
The heart
it
rate
belongs to the
steadies.
same genus
The
family
mind
of
clears.
symbolic fruit-bearing
Those shifts are
trees
not
tied
small.
to covering,
They're the doorway
provision,
through which
and
longer
reflection.
healing can continue.